Grows. I'm Ryan Patton. Today we welcome Coliseum and Fotocrime frontman Ryan Patterson to the podcast. The new Fotocrime record, Security, is out this Friday, March 13th on Arttofact Records. Ryan talks about the influence of Dischord Records and creating music outside of genre boxes, inviting friends to be a part of the new Fotocrime record, the theme behind Security, how Fotocrime opened the door for more music from Coliseum, and more. It was so great getting to talk to Ryan and have him on the podcast. I think the new Fotocrime record is incredible and everyone should check it out. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com for our Discord server, our Patreon page, and our mailing list. And if you like what you're hearing, subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Never miss an episode. Enjoy today's conversation with Ryan Patterson of Fotocrime. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Are you originally from Louisville?
Yeah, pretty much. I was born in Lexington, which is like an hour east, and grew up about an hour south of here.
Nice. My brother moved to Louisville, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago now at this point, and I keep meaning to go visit him, but I've never been. I'm just like, one day I'm gonna go and see him, but he keeps coming up here. So
okay.
What was growing up like?
Yeah, it was all right. You know, it was my brother and I, we grew up in this town called Elizabethtown, Kentucky. It's about an hour south of Louisville, so we were pretty isolated. You know, like we just kind of built our own world. So I'm really thankful for that, because it kind of like, I think, set the precedent for us being very industrious and like DIYers, you know, because you just didn't have a world. You just kind of got little trickles of the outside world from music videos and magazines and stuff like that. And then you just built your own thing. And then one day I discovered that all that stuff was already thriving in Louisville, but I had already kind of, so it was great. It was cool. I learned my little way of doing things. And then in my later high school years was able to kind of enter into this huge Louisville hardcore scene. Yeah.
Which is cool.
It was great.
What gets you into music and maybe hardcore? And then how do you discover like what's happening in Louisville? Is it just a matter of you're now into hardcore and it's like, all right, what's happening? And then this whole thing opens up.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I think I was opened up to it from skateboard magazines, like from Thrasher mainly, and a little bit of MTV, you know, like 120 Minutes was the alternative show that was on every Sunday night from midnight to 2 a.m. So I would tape that and then watch it on Monday. And there would sometimes be glimpses of hardcore and punk, and obviously like alternative music was big. So The Cure and things like that were huge for me as a kid, Depeche Mode and all that kind of stuff. And then, Thrasher, you would read an interview with a skateboarder and they would mention Minor Threat, or you'd see a Misfits shirt. And so luckily we had a little music store in the mall that had a lot of that stuff. But I didn't realize that there was a scene in Louisville until I was a little older. I didn't have any concept that there were, I don't know. I guess I understood like there was the DC hardcore scene because I knew about Dischord, but I didn't really understand that it existed everywhere. I just kind of thought it was probably in the biggest cities. So I stumbled upon it in Louisville for sure.
Nice. What drew you to guitar, or were you like originally a bass player, or like how did that work out? Especially because I know Evan plays music too. Like, how did you guys? Did you fight about that? Like, we're going to be in a band together. Who plays what?
We probably fought about everything, kind of. But we were also kind of like best friends. And I'm 4 years older than him, so I was kind of doing all that stuff before him, and then bringing him into it. But we grew up in a house that was just really embraced music. I mean, our dad and mom they're they're huge music fans, and they saw all the 60s bands they could see. You know, they saw the Doors and they saw whoever. So we grew up with Led Zeppelin records in our dad's collection, and he's a Beatles fanatic. And so we would get all that kind of stuff. And then, so our entryway into our own music was kind of easy because our world was already music obsessed.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a lot of support for us playing instruments or playing guitars and stuff. So yeah, I just formed a band as the singer, and then my friend's older brother had a shitty guitar, and I bought that from him, and I just started learning how to play guitar. And then, you know, Evan would come in my bedroom and pick up the guitar, and you know, so it was just kind of that. It was like just this desire to create. I mean, we're both artists, and our dad is an artist, you know, just kind of like casual artist, but art was encouraged in our lives. We took art lessons and went to art classes and painted and always were doing creative things. So music was just a really normal extension of that, even though it was so counterculture. Like our parents were and weren't supportive of it. So it was almost like secret. It was almost like almost like a battle, you know. We'd get in trouble and the guitar would get taken away, and we'd go find another one at our friend's house or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. It was just the wanting to make songs, you know. I didn't want to play guitar. I wanted to make songs. Yeah. And that's kind of how I feel to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting about both you and your brother's careers, like from Endpoint, like Young Widows and Coliseum are both like hardcore adjacent, but like off kilter, I guess, or just like not strictly in that scene. Like, was there something about the Louisville scene at that time, or just your musical taste as they expanded, that led you particularly to want to do something a little less like just straightforward hardcore?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I would say that probably because of our influences being, at least mine, were primarily like DC stuff, and all that stuff was never straightforward. Yeah. You know, I mean, after the first waves of hardcore there, it was always very art inflected. And then we were really into things like Drive Like Jehu that was weird, and all that. But then Louisville has all these strange edges. You know, there are bands like Rodan and Crane and Slint, and there's all that going on along with the classic Louisville hardcore when we're growing up. And I wouldn't say that we were diehard fans of the Louisville art punk world, but we experienced it. You know, like I saw Rodan open for Endpoint. Did I like Rodan when I was 17? Not really, you know, but we still were open to it. And those bands brought interesting bands to their shows to open and things like that. So I think that was something. And then I also just think, because for me at least, and I don't know how Evan feels, but I always felt like an outsider and an underdog because we didn't grow up in Louisville and kind of had to fight our way into it. You know, like we were embraced, but we were never part of back then we weren't part of the kind of pre-established lineage. And so I just think we just didn't want to do the same things, you know. I mean, it would have been really easy for us to be just another Louisville band. But if you look at, like, I'd say anything he and I have done, there is almost no precedent in Louisville for that sound. Like, if you look at the National Acrobat, there's not a band that's like Louisville, like in Louisville like that before. And then Breathe the Resist and Coliseum. I mean, there's not really a D-beat hardcore band in Louisville prior to Coliseum. And there are certainly like post-punk and dark wave bands in Louisville, but I don't think you could point to one that is like, has been, you know, known to some extent like Fotocrime is or whatever. So I think it's just the desire to not do the same thing as everybody else. And that's just so intrinsically deep in body that it's almost frustrating.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I'm like, man, I could really succeed a little more if I would just not always be contrarian in my way of approaching things. But that's just how I am. I just don't want to do the same thing over and over. I don't want to do what everyone else around me is doing. And every time I find myself in a lane of music, I find myself disillusioned with that. And then I push really hard away from it and go somewhere else. And so it's interesting. But I mean, I would say that like I found my overall community in Louisville and elsewhere. But then when you go into these other little niches, it's often kind of illusioning or like disheartening because it's not as community based and as inspiring as the things you came from or whatever.
So, yeah. It's interesting to hear you talk about the Dischord influence in your own musical life, because there's so much listening to, especially the new Fotocrime record, that like reminds me of that Egg Hunt 7-inch or some like left of center Dischord bands that are like more on the art side, and how kind of DC it feels at moments. Like it's cool.
Cool. That's good to hear. I mean, that's definitely like just so deep in me. And then you can follow all those things. Like I knew Wax Trax and Ministry and like that early 90s industrial music scene. I was kind of discovering that at the same time I discovered Dischord stuff, but I gravitated in the end toward Dischord. But then you have things like Palehead that's like the meeting of that unlikely pairing. So what we're doing makes so much sense to me because these things kind of parallel each other. And there's a lot of Louisville history with like drum machine bands and things like that. And so I was thinking recently that there's a band from Louisville that's pretty much unknown called Pulse that put out one 7-inch, I think. And they played the first show I ever went to. They opened for Jawbox, and they were a drum machine duo, kind of Godflesh and Big Black influenced. And at some point recently, I had that revelation of like, whoa, shit, the first big show, the first show I saw that I didn't play, there was a drum machine band. This has been part of my experience in punk my whole life. So, but yeah, it's cool to hear that you're hearing some Dischord in there, because that's certainly in our souls.
Let's talk about Fotocrime. What was kind of the inspiration to start a dark wave project, to do something more, I don't know, melodic focused, I guess?
Yeah. That was one of the things, is just kind of changing my perspective and my approach in songwriting. Like, I think with Coliseum, I was really happy with what we were doing. And I'm sure if somebody followed the whole trajectory, you could tell that there were a lot of post-punk and influences and stuff. And on our last record, we were experimenting with synthesizers and sequencing and things like that. But I think there was a thing vocally I was really always struggling with in that band, where I don't know, I never felt happy as a singer in Coliseum. And I realize now part of that is volume. Part of that is like when you're trying to sing over just like an insane wall of amplifiers, all you can do is just go as hard as you can. And that makes it hard to find your voice as a singer and try different things. So that was one of my number one goals, is to reset and reapproach myself, my voice and how I approach singing, and kind of do the same thing with songwriting. And like the first Fotocrime record, I wanted to make a whole album entirely on my own, just to see if I could do it. Like, can I play everything, write everything? Can I accomplish this? And I think when I was first starting to write songs, they were probably more like Portishead and Mark Lanigan influenced. They were a little more mellow. And I was just like, is this something I'm going to be able to perform? And like, where I might like this, but where does this take me? And then I kind of drifted more into like, the things that were really inspiring Fotocrime when I started the band, which was Sisters of Mercy. And there's a band called Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry that's like hugely inspirational to me. They're a British band from the 80s. It's called, they're put into the goth category, but they are not goth at all. I mean, they are like a heavy, repetitive post-punk band that has a drum machine, sometimes plays with a drum machine and a drummer. And I really, really love them. There's another band called Loop that's kind of in the same genre, same style as Red Lorry, Yellow Lorry. Those were things that I really was into, these kind of repetitive mechanical bands with a drum machine, but with winding guitars and melodic vocals. So yeah, man, there's so much that went into that thought process. And I basically just took a year off from playing music live and worked on Fotocrime. So that's like this interesting dark year in my life where I stepped away from touring. It's the only year of my entire life since I've been 19 that I didn't tour or anything.
Yeah. And
I just worked on that music alone and, tried to find some level of reinvention.
Nice.
And and as not this is necessarily the question, but I see Fotocrime as me trying to kind of like erase myself, and then as it's gone on, I see it like this intersection where there's the me that I fundamentally am, and then the me that I tried to reinvent, and they're kind of meeting more and more. And I feel like the new record is maybe more of that meeting than ever, where it feels even more like fundamentally who I am, and touching on those things like Dischord or whatever that are influences that are intrinsic in my life, along with the kind of post-punk, dark wave, industrial thing that Fotocrime does. So it's kind of fun to see that happen and kind of be able to perceive it even when it's not intentional from my end.
Yeah. With Coliseum kind of coming back and releasing Infinity shit and just like playing shows again, has it helped kind of maybe refocus Fotocrime in a different way where you're like, there's this creative element happening over here that is not what Fotocrime is, and it's easier to, I don't know, differentiate, maybe play in that sandbox in a way you weren't when you first started?
Yeah, honestly, it makes me want to do it makes it all feel of one piece more than it did before, where I think I was clearly fighting against Coliseum when Fotocrime started, in a way, like wanting to just really put that there and do something different. I don't feel that really now, and I can 100% see where like the Coliseum Infinity shit record influenced the new Fotocrime record, because I just kind of wanted to rip a little harder, and I kind of wanted to have everything be a bit more energetic. And I think maybe I felt more calm in terms of my songwriting. I don't know, I hate to use journey, but like my mission, I really had a mission to become a better songwriter and to hone my songwriting craft. And I feel like over the first 4 Fotocrime records, I did that. And then on the new, when I just was like, man, let's just write some fucking cool riffs and some punk songs, And so it was cool. Yeah. So, but it's interesting. Yeah. I feel like the new Fotocrime record is probably the closest to Coliseum, but I feel really comfortable with that. And so I think it's easy for them to be differentiated, but I also think ultimately a band is a group of people, and even though Fotocrime is essentially ultimately me solo, whoever's in the band with me has a huge effect on it at that time. Whereas Coliseum will always be the 3 members that are that ended the band and that are in the band now. Like, it will never not be them. So it's that's that, like whatever we create is that, and whatever this is here. So, yeah, it's interesting, man. It's cool. I again, when you're having those moments of like self reflection, it's really nice to like see where things meet and to kind of see like, oh, this thing I did really bled over into this. And I think it's neat for artistic growth to kind of understand that. And it's one of the reasons that I'm fanatical about doing so much music, because every bit of it leads to something else. And it's really advantageous to be creative all the time. It really helps.
Yeah. New album's called Security. You have a bunch of guest spots on this record. The new single you recently released as Jay Weinberg on drums. You got Aaron Turner. How did you come up with who you wanted to guest on this album, and were the parts written for specific people in mind?
Yeah, it's kind of varied a bit. Like Aaron and his band Sumac, which includes Brian from Russian Circles and Botch, who's a very old friend of mine as well. They happened to play Louisville the day before we started tracking the new Fotocrime record. And so I just invited them over to my studio and said, hey, let's just put you on some songs. So that was cool. That was very spontaneous. They just happened to be in town. And then other things like Jay Weinberg, he and I have been friends for a really long time and have been talking forever about doing something together. We'd worked on a project a long time ago that never came out or anything. And he came to one of our shows and said, I'd love to play on a song. So once I kind of had the songs demoed and the framework built with the drum machine, he wrote drum parts over that and played his parts with the drum machine and stuff. So some were spontaneous and some were very planned, like Barney from Napalm Death sings on the new song Unthinkable. And that was, of course, like a lot of logistical planning. I like Barney. I like what Napalm Death is doing a lot. And I reached out to him, and he had to figure out where he could record it and all that kind of stuff. So, and then on the other hand, there were lots of people in Louisville that are friends that just drop by.
Nice. And
drummers that I would intentionally give a song to because I thought that they would be really great for that. Like the song Grifter on Security. My friend Ben, who plays drums in Mirrorless and has been in Whip Chains with me and Black God, he's a really great like 16th note hi-hat person, and he just has a really great meter. And he just came in and just gave that song like a great human element along with the electronic element. Yeah. And I knew he'd be good for that. So yeah, it's just cool. I just like to have my friends involved. It just is exciting to me and meaningful to me. So I do that a lot.
Nice. The last song on the album is Security. What led to that being the title of the record, and what kind of things were inspiring you, or were you drawing from a lyrical perspective?
Yeah, the title of the album is, and the song comes from one of my like fears I've had my whole life. Like my entire life, I have had paranoia about home invasion, like since I was a little kid, and I don't know why. Like I don't know if I saw a movie or a show or if I heard a story, pre any cognizant memory that I have. But like I'd say in my teens and 20s, it was really bad. And when I first lived alone as a young adult, I was really, really paranoid. And then as we get older and I have a little more of a, I own my own home, and you have the ability to kind of like, reinforce the locks. And now like fucking cameras are so easy for anybody to have. And somebody made a joke about like how I was, joked to me about how I was really obsessed with, I don't remember it wasn't security, some other term, like, like surveillance or something. Yeah. And I was like, well, I'm really into security. Yeah. and it just kind of spawned these thoughts of I am, and it is a paranoia that I have. But then what am I giving away, and what are we all giving away for our security? And that's what the song is about, which is like, I am accepting that Google is probably keeping this footage.
Yeah.
And that they know when my partner and I leave the house, and it has recognized our faces, and, you know, it knows every fucking thing about the ins and outs of our house, not the inside, but everything about the outside. And I've accepted that because I want to be able to be woken up at 3 a.m. when somebody passes my alleyway.
Yeah.
You know, and it helps me sleep better at night. It helps me feel more comfortable when I'm on tour and things like that. So I've given this thing up. And then if we take that to a macro level, we're there everywhere. Yeah. We're there with our phones. We've given up everything, and we're giving up more and more and more, to the point where, I mean, they're not mincing words. Like the administration and the billionaires want us to be fucking slaves, and they think we will enjoy being slaves working in factories, or, you know, or having no job and paying for these shitty goods we receive, because we have some modicum of a base life, which in America we don't even, is not even as simple and provided for a life as it is in many other places. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what the song is about. The song is like, the verses are this kind of deadpan citizen who is going through the steps in life, and then saying what I wouldn't do for a little security. And it's kind of a thought we might have in a real way, right? Like, we might go to the bank and we're like, what I wouldn't do to have a little more savings, or what I wouldn't do to have a nicer car. But so that's kind of what the song is about. Like, and then halfway through, the perspective of the character changes, and he's kind of seeing everything. You know, the line is like, there's a metallic taste that shakes you right out, like a car crash you narrowly missed, or something along those lines. And it's that kind of idea of like, fuck, like, when do we open our eyes and think, you know, what have we given up?
Yeah.
You know, what cost? So, yeah, that's kind of the theme of the record, and about the song title in general. It's also a Peter Gabriel album title, so it's like a bit of a nod to that. So, but yeah, that's the big concept.
Nice. Yeah, that's a conversation me and my wife have often, of just like, I don't know, if fucking ICE comes through, or like, are we willing to give up security to like stand up for our neighbors and the people around us? And like,
right. Yeah. I mean, are we literally willing to give up our lives for that?
Yeah.
And it's a hard choice, because we haven't had to make that choice. And I think we're all being pushed into a place where we're like, okay, we might have to make that choice now.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. But again, I don't have those answers, but, but those are the questions I'm asking, like everybody else is. And I felt like that overall theme related to a lot of the different things in the record, which the record's just, as you can tell, like, it's angrier, and it's like, and there are like some, I don't know, some pessimistic ideas that just didn't seem, I don't know, like, some of them seem dystopian, and then you fast forward to 6 months after you've recorded the record and it's coming out, and they're even more true than they were back then.
Right.
You know? So, like, I don't think I'd heard the term Crimewave used by the administration when I wrote the song. I wouldn't have said that in the song.
Yeah.
Then, like, right afterwards is when the DC shit happened, and he's saying there's a crime wave in DC, and like, you're like, fuck, every imaginary idea you have is coming true, in the worst way possible. Yep.
That was a lot of fun to live through.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, they're fucking still there, but
right.
It's a joy.
The news is like, okay, we'll go over here, but it's still happening in each town. It's so fucking weird. Yeah.
album's out March 13th. You guys have a small run of tour dates up the East Coast. Is that just kind of your plan to take it easy, do these few shows, and then, I don't know, are you just like...
Yeah, we're a small band and we're in our late 40s, so touring like for 6 weeks at a time is not really in our future. But yeah, we're doing these bursts. We're doing the bit in April up to the East Coast in Canada. We're going to Europe for a few weeks in May. We're doing another East Coast thing that won't be announced for a bit, in July and August, West Coast. So yeah, little bursts that make sense and aren't ruining your ability to live a normal life between going out and living your wild punk rock fantasy.
Yeah. What does Coliseum have in store? Anything, or just like taking it easy?
Yeah, we're just kind of like fighting against reality, which is, we all live in different states and just trying to figure out what we're going to do. I mean, last year we just played one show and it was really great. We played this one festival in Toronto and it was beautiful. And I kind of felt like happy with the band for the year. I think for that band, because we worked so hard and fought so hard and had a lot of successes, but we also had a lot of like losses, a lot of like kind of failures. It felt like when we were a band. For us, we're kind of at that point where we like to do things that are simple victories. Like the CLSM Infinity Shit record was that. Like, it was a surprise release. We announced it one day. There was no press. There was no buildup. It just came out. People were stoked. We were happy. I went to bed and I texted the other guys like, that was awesome. And that was that. And there was nothing else. We didn't have to promote the record for 6 months and hope it sold and go play a show and hope people came. So right now we're trying to work on new music. We have some demos that I really like. And right now the plan is to get together in July, but often we make plans. And then as time comes, there's tours or life things.
Yeah.
So, I would love to put out a new record and play a handful of shows, but also I'm just kind of happy that it exists.
Yeah.
It never didn't exist for us, but I'm happy that it exists in a way that it can be shared with people here and there. And that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. The music industry exists in a way now where like you can just have that, take those small victories and be like cool and not have to break your back trying to, pay some record label a fuck ton of money for records that never sold, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And when you put something out, people will be stoked. So
yeah, I hope so.
What I wouldn't do for